Fellas, UFC 300's in just a few months, and we still haven't got a main event for it, and this really makes me think, who is actually going to be the main event of UFC 300? I've been looking at all the stars and all the possibilities, and there's limited people who I think could actually main event this card, because so far, a lot of the champions are taken up, and that might be what you're thinking. What about the champions that, they could just put 2 title fights on it? When you look at the actual champions we've got right now, a lot of them are actually unavailable. Sean Strickland's, he's got the fight with Dricus, he's not going to be available. Volkanovski's got the fight with Topuria, he's not going to be available. Sean O'Malley's literally fighting the card before against Marlon Vera, he's unavailable. Islam Makhachev, first of all, he's got Ramadan, which could affect it, and second of all, he's also meant to be injured, because I think Dana White said Islam's injured, so he's not going to be able to fight Oliveira or anything, so he's going to be out until like summer. John Jones, obviously, again, he's literally just had elbow surgery, he's injured, he's not going to be able to fight Stipe until at least mid-2024, which leaves us left with 3 champions in the UFC. I'm going to rule out Pantoja because, listen, he's a fun fighter, but I just don't think he's going to be able to headline a card as big as UFC 300. I don't think he has the name value. And then I've also ruled off Leon Edwards because the next fight is going to be Leon versus Bilal, and I just don't think they're going to dare put that on the main event of UFC 300 at all. Maybe it could be like a co-main event, but definitely not the main event. Which leaves us with one champion, which is Alex Pereira. Now, I'm not going to, talk about him right now. I'll talk about him later in the video. But that leaves us with only one champion who could possibly headline this card. There's also got a few other stars as well. People have been thinking about McGregor on this card. Well, it's not going to be him because he's just announced that he's going to be fighting at 185 against Michael Chandler in June. So that excludes Conor McGregor from the mix. So it's not going to be him. Also, a couple people have been saying, what about Nate Diaz? He might be able to get a fight against a few lightweights. There's also Masvidal as well, who's a big star. These are both, they're not even in the UFC, first of all. Masvidal retired and Diaz didn't retire, but he took time off the UFC, went to go box Jake Paul, and neither are signed with the UFC. And apparently, we've just got news that they're going to be boxing soon, so it's not going to be either of them. And then it just really makes you think, what about the other stars? Like, this card, we've only got one champion who can possibly main event. What about the other non-title fight stars who could possibly main event? Well, first of all, I've gone for Dustin Poirier, but it can't be him because he's got a fight booked at UFC 299 at co-main event against Benoit St. Denis, so he's definitely not going to be available. Charles Oliveira is on the card, but it's been announced that he's not going to be the main event. He is against Arman Tsarukyan, which is going to be a fun fight for the main card, but like I said, it's not going to be on the main event of the card. And then we've got Israel Adesanya, who I'm not going to completely rule out, and you'll see why later on in the video, but he has also stated that he does want to take a long break from the sport, which is obviously going to affect things. It's going to affect, when he comes back, is he going to be ready for 300? So I'm not going to completely rule out Israel Adesanya, but he's definitely, I wouldn't say he's, one of the most reliable people to bet on. But this is who I think is possibly left. Like I said, we've got Alex Pereira as a champion. So the first fight I think we could possibly see main event is Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. The reason we might see this, and by the way, I haven't included Pereira versus Ankalaev because Ankalaev's about to fight. Is he going to be ready by April? I'm not sure. And second of all, is Ankalaev or maybe even Walker, are they, big enough names to headline UFC 300? I'm not sure. But the reason I've gone, Jamal Hill, first of all, he deserves a title shot. He's next in line. Jamal Hill obviously had that fight against Glover Teixeira. He vacated due to an injury. He deserves a title shot. And I feel like Pereira versus Hill is probably the most logical fight to make at light heavyweight. So it could be this. It would also be a fun fight as well. Jamal Hill's a knockout artist. Pereira, he sleeps people as well. It would be such a fun striking matchup between Pereira and Hill. And that's why I think he could definitely get away with being a headline for 300. But the reason against is, well, first of all, is Jamal Hill big enough to headline UFC 300? I'm not saying that he's someone like Pantoja who has no name value at all, but UFC 300, we want to be capturing the casual audience. Pereira's already a massive star, but is Jamal Hill that big of a star to capture, the worldwide audience? I'm not sure. And second of all, we did get news early this month, well, not this month, but last month, that Jamal Hill is in legal trouble for, domestic abuse over his brother. And I'm not sure if he's going to be cleared to fight by April. Maybe he will be. Hopefully he is. But yeah, that's the reason against and for. I think this is a fun fight. It could definitely be the main event of 300. Also, Pereira did post today that he's got a fight booked, and it could very well be UFC 300. But let's say Jamal Hill's not an option. The other option I've gone with is Israel Adesanya. Now, like I said before, I've not completely ruled him out, but the reasons for this, first of of all, it's a massive fight. Pereira versus Adesanya 3 is one of the biggest fights you can make in the UFC right now. It would be a fun build-up between them. I would love seeing this fight. I can't wait if these guys have a fight again. Pereira's won in MMA. Adesanya's won in MMA. Obviously, we've got the kickboxing, Pereira's ahead. But in strictly MMA, they've both got finishes over each other. There's a rivalry that's been, they've had a rivalry for a long time, but there's been a lot of heat building up recently on Instagram and Twitter between them, so that's going to sell the fight. He could definitely headline a card as well. I mean, Adesanya is one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Pereira's one of the biggest stars in the UFC. They could definitely get away with headlining a card as big as UFC 300. It's one of the biggest fights you can actually make in the sport, and it makes sense for both. I did a video about this the other day, but from Adesanya's side, a fight with Pereira, I mean, he gets a free title shot against a guy that is, I mean, if Adesanya can beat Pereira, he wins technically the points in MMA because it's one-on-one, and if Adesanya wins a trilogy and he is coming off a knockout over him, he could definitely, have that against Pereira. And then from Pereira's perspective, last time he fought Adesanya, he got knocked out cold. It's a way for him to kind of get revenge over it, I guess, maybe avenge the loss even though he is ahead. So that's why it makes sense. And then the reason against is that Adesanya is coming off a loss. It doesn't really make sense that Adesanya loses to Strickland pretty dominantly and then gets a title shot from it. It doesn't really make sense. That's the one reason. It is a bit of an undeserved title shot. And I'm not sure how the rest of the light heavyweight division will feel about that. I'm not sure about people who aren't interested in this matchup will feel about it. And on top of that, like I said before, Izzy has stated that he does want to take a break. That might take away the reliability of this matchup, because Adesanya has stated that he does want to take a break from the sport. But I think this could definitely get away with it. In the final matchup, this has kind of died down. This was a lot bigger 2 weeks ago, but it's Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall. Again, a big fight. Now, the reason this is big, I mean, it's a triple champ status for Pereira. It's a chance for him to get triple. I know Aspinall's the interim champion, not the undisputed champion, so technically he wouldn't be, triple champ. I mean, he's not really double champ either. He hasn't actually got the middleweight belt, but he's been the middleweight champion. He's also been the light heavyweight champion. He is the light heavyweight champion. So if Alex Pereira was able to get a heavyweight belt as well, get a belt in 3 different weight classes, that'd be massive, and that's a perfect way you can kind of sell the main event between these two. They're both very well-known names as well. I wouldn't say Aspinall's on the same star level as Alex Pereira, but he's massive in the UK. He's Aspinall. He's a fairly well-known name after he knocked out Pavlovich on the co-main event of 295. So it's not like, they're complete no-names. And it's a really interesting fight as well. The majority of the people think Aspinall's going to run through him, but it's Pereira. This fight would sell itself. They don't need to trash talk each other, and I feel like the fight itself would be amazing between them. The only reasons I've got against this is Aspinall has said it's not happening. Do I believe him? I kind of do believe him, but again, if he actually was on 300, Aspinall's not going to leak it early, is he? But he has said that it's not happening because apparently Pereira doesn't want to do it for some reason. And it's just quite unlikely overall for Pereira to just randomly move up a weight class. I don't know where this rumour started, but this could easily be a main event for 300 for a title fight, and maybe we have like a female fight as the co-main event. But yeah, this could be a massive main event for UFC 300 if it did happen. But on the topic of Tom Aspinall, I think he could also main event the card, but not against Pereira. I think it could be against Stipe Miocic. Now, this is unlikely, and I'll talk about the reasons against in a second, but the reasons for it makes sense for Aspinall. Aspinall wants a fight with Jones. If he can get a fight against the greatest heavyweight of all time, Stipe Miocic, and if he can beat Stipe, then that's going to guarantee him a fight with Jones. They're definitely not going to give Stipe a fight against Jones for a title fight if he's 0-2 against Ngannou and the interim champion Aspinall. Aspinall said the only other fight he'd actually really want to take in the division outside of Jones is a Stipe fight. And Jones is out. Listen, Jones has got an injury. He's going to be out until mid-2024. Stipe has already said that he's cleared to fight. Why not Stipe versus the interim champion Tom Aspinall? It makes a lot of sense. I mean, Aspinall's the interim champ. He's ready to fight the champ. If they're not going to give him John Jones, why not just give him Stipe? Because I feel like it's a bit random how they're only allowing Stipe to fight for the belt now. And it can also set up Aspinall versus Jones. That is probably one of the biggest fights you can make. Everyone wants to see Aspinall versus Jones. Nobody wants to see Stipe versus Jones. And if Aspinall can get past Stipe Miocic, the only other fight John Jones can have in the division is Tom Aspinall. That's the only fight that makes sense, is have a Tom Aspinall who you vacate the belt and leave. So it's a perfect setup for that fight. The reasons against is, like I said, UFC haven't shown any interest in this. Dana White said it's definitely not going to happen. It looks like they still want to do Stipe versus Jones, and they want to let Tom Aspinall be the interim champ and defend against the other up-and-comers. So the UFC don't really seem to be interested in this. And second of all, Is it a big enough headline for 300? Is Tom Aspinall a big name by himself against Stipe Miocic? I'm not sure. I think personally they definitely get away with it, but I wouldn't, they could have definitely bigger stars than this, but overall I wouldn't be mad if this was the main event of 300. And finally, I've still got Tom Aspinall. And I've got Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. This, again, a big fight. This is one of the funnest heavyweight fights you can make right now in the heavyweight division, in my opinion. This is one of the funnest fights. You've got two quick, the new breed of heavyweight fighters. Cyril Gane against, went out there and battered Sergey Spivak. It's definitely a fun fight between two of the best in the division on the feet. I would love to see this fight. I don't care when I see it. I just want to see this fight. And again, it's one of those where the fight will sell itself. You don't need all the trash talk. Cyril Gane and Aspinall, the fight would sell itself, and it's a fight for Aspinall while there's nobody else. Aspinall said he wants to fight and he wants to stay active. If it's not Cyril Gane, there's no one else really, because they're not going to give him Jones and Stipe like we just talked about. Gelton Almeida and Blades are out, so the only other fight that kind of makes sense is Cyril Gane. So I feel like this is a perfect fight. Now, the reasons against: Aspinall has declined Cyril Gane's offer before, not because he ducked him or anything, but obviously Aspinall called out Cyril Gane after Gane beat Spivak. Gane basically declined Aspinall's offer, and now that Gane wants Aspinall because Aspinall's the interim champion, Aspinall's kind of, seen that it's a bit unfair for that reason. And the build-up wouldn't be big enough for casuals. If you're a casual and you hear this massive card, UFC 300, and then you look at the build-up between the two people in the main event, I'm not sure it would sell, because I don't think these two would trash talk each other. Not that it needs trash talk, but from a casual, perspective, would it sell itself? And the final fight I've got is Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. Again, this is one of these fights that are rumoured to happen. I don't know where the rumour came from, but people for some reason think that this fight's going to happen, so I've included it. The reasons for, they're both massive names. This would be a massive headliner, bigger than the Aspinall ones. Justin Gaethje, one of the biggest stars. Max Holloway, one of the biggest stars. Every casual knows who they are as well, so it would sell itself. It would be a hell of a fun fight as well. Max Holloway, one of the best boxers, one of the best featherweights in the world. He's the best featherweight in the world if you take away Volkanovski. Now you've got Gaethje, the BMF belt, the best lightweight in the world if you exclude Islam and Oliveira, so I guess he's not the best lightweight in the world, but both are extremely fun fighters, never in a boring fight. This fight would sell itself, and the build-up would be amazing as well. And you can even put a belt on it. You can put the BMF belt on it, because, that's what they like to do when there's no title fight. Massive headliner, 100% could get away with being a main event for UFC 300. But the reasons against: Holloway did say that he's not on 300. Now, again, he might just be saying this to kind of create the suspense that this might be a fight. He might be lying to us, but he has stated that he's not even been called to fight on 300, which I could believe. And it also is a bit of a random matchup. You've got the BMF belt, the number one contender in one division, versus Max Holloway, who's kind of the number one contender in another division. It's kind of like a matchup between two number one contenders. But it's a free fight for Gaethje, and that's all the fights I've thought of. Some people have been saying that they think Adesanya versus Dricus could be the main event. I don't think it will be, because first of all, Adesanya must have been lying about the long break, which isn't likely. On top of that, Dricus needs to be fit to fight from January all the way to April, which I'm not sure 3 months he's going to be ready in. And on top of that, for this fight to happen, that would require Dricus du Plessis loses to Sean Strickland. So I think this fight is unlikely. Khamzat and Adesanya, again, a massive non-title fight, but I don't know if this is going to happen. I don't know if Khamzat's well right now, and I'm not sure if Adesanya, like I said before, he's ready to fight. But yeah, those are the fights who I think could be the main event of UFC 300. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree? Who do you think's going to main event the card? I can't wait for the card personally. But yeah, thank you for watching.